Let's talk about arrangement in music. If you think if I have a great tune, then that's enough, my song is gonna come out great. Not really. You need to focus on a lot more than just making a good melody. And we're gonna talk about 4 major steps that you need to look into in order to make a good song arrangement. But if you are new here, I'm Florina Jain, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and I put out a lot of music production related content. So if you like those, don't forget to like and subscribe this channel. Let's get into it. The first point is to fill the frequency spectrum. Now, this is going to change a lot of your perspective. We're going to look at the audible range for a human between the entire frequency range, right from 20 hertz till 20 kilohertz is what is audible for a human. Now, music is all about how you're going to manipulate this range of frequency. If you decide to make a song and have just a few elements filled, like for example, I decide that I need a little bit of piano and maybe that's going to come over here. And then I want a little bit of vocals probably. Probably that's going to occupy this area. Then maybe small guitar solo, which is probably going to come over here, and you decide to stop your song with that. So you've hardly filled like the mid frequency and a tiny bit of highs. That's it. You've not even come down to the low frequencies. But if you still have a nice song, a nice vocal, a nice guitarist, everything is good. But if you've not filled the frequency, that is actually going to sound like your song is really empty. Point is, you need to complete the entire spectrum in order to have a very good quality in your song. So that means when you have all these divisions, say this is low frequency, and then you have mids, and then you have highs, you need to have elements that complete the entire frequency spectrum. So probably I'm going to have a bass guitar that's going to come here, and maybe I'm going to have a kick that's probably going to occupy that space. Maybe I can have some hi-hats, cymbals playing all the way up over here, and a little bit of electric guitar and some more high frequency elements that come over here. Maybe I have something else that occupies this area as well. So if you look at this frequency right now, I have different instruments or different elements as such which occupy the entire frequency spectrum. So right now I have everything filled right from 20 hertz till 20 kilohertz. When you have this perspective while you make a song, definitely your song is going to have good quality. Otherwise, if you just have 2 or 3 elements that just occupy barely any frequencies in the spectrum, you're not going to have a very good quality. In comparison to anything else that's out on YouTube or Spotify, your song is going to sound really weak and empty, and it's going to be noticeable even for an amateur who doesn't know music at all. So that's your first thing that you need to look into. You need to make sure you have any kind of element that kind of justifies the genre that you're using and the respective instruments that you're using, but you need to fill the frequency without fail. This is your first point. Now let's move on to the next one, which is you have to give variation to your tracks. Let me elaborate on that. Now, yes, I have instrument 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 instruments. And let's say it is bass, and then I have kick, piano, I have 2 vocals, some hi-hats, electric guitar, and then cymbals. This is just a rough example. Now that you know that you need to fill the frequency spectrum, should I bring all these instruments right when I start the song? Do I mean quality in that way? Not really, because if you actually begin your song with everything filled like this, maybe your song is going to sound okay when it starts off. It's going to start off with a bang and it's going to sound good. But then, as people continue to listen to your song, they start to realize that there's nothing more that the song is going to give them. There's no more exciting, element that's going to come in, because you've showcased entire element that you have on your song right from the beginning itself. So what is there to look forward to? What is the variation that you're going to give? It's just going to sound the same throughout, right? You have 8 elements and all your 8 instruments are going to keep coming all over again. So that's why I said you need to give variation. And when I say variation, I'm not meaning to tell you that you need to change your melody for sure or give different progressions. Not that. We are getting into a technical aspect right now. When I say variation, I mean give variation in terms of how you fill the frequency. Yes, you need to fill the frequency, the entire frequency spectrum, but it need not be filled right from the beginning of your song till the ending. You understand, it needs to gradually come up. So maybe when I start the song, I'm not going to start with everything. I'm probably going to start with just the piano. That's it. And eventually one of the vocals is going to come up, and slowly as the song builds up, I'm going to bring in probably my bass and a little bit of hi-hats. Now for the listener, already this feels like it's a peak because I'm slowly progressing from like one element, which is piano, to nearly four elements. But they don't know what other elements are going to come, right? So they will have something to look forward to. And then when probably my first hook comes, maybe the first chorus comes, I'm going to bring in kick and maybe another vocal, but not in full-fledged manner. But for the listener, this is going to be the highest point. And again, the song is going to probably drop down a bit, meaning I'm going to pull away the hi-hat and the other vocal as well. So it again goes down, and then eventually it again builds up, and finally maybe at the end chorus, the climax of the song, that's when everything else comes into play. So now you have variations, you have hills and you have valleys, you have ups and downs, and you constantly keep the listener engaged. So this is happening because the way you manipulate the frequencies is making the listener keep, listening to your song. They have something to look forward to. They know that, the couple of instruments that you're hearing right now may not, keep repeating till the end. Or maybe there's going to be a completely new set of instruments, or a huge drop in the beat, or a huge build up in the beat. It could be anything. But people need to have that kind of, looking forward to experience when they listen to a song. That's going to give a really good experience. If it's going to sound monotonous, if you have 5 instruments and you're going to repeat that all the time, may not be as exciting as, changing them around a little bit. So this is your second most important thing that you need to focus on. And the third point is, don't let your frequencies clash. Now that simply means that just because you want to add an instrument doesn't mean it's actually going to fit the song. Now in the same example, let's say I choose to want to add a violin, and the violin VST that I have is probably somewhere in the mids once again. So this is where my violin is going to come at. Exactly where you see that piano waveform is, that's exactly where the violin is also coming. Now your violin might be from the best VST bundle possible, and you might be the best player to play your MIDI in a very natural way, and you give modulation and everything, but still notice that the violin waveform is exactly where the piano is also coming in, right? So they are going to clash, definitely, because both their instruments are at the same frequency area. So when this happens, your violin will also not be in the right quality, piano will also not be in the right quality. So you're going to hear a muffled, or some frequencies on both those instruments will slightly fade away. There'll be some phase related issues and so many other problems. So when I say frequencies should not clash, it means whatever instruments or whatever elements you're going to put on your song, make sure that when you add them, they don't really mess around with the quality of the existing instruments that are already there. If you add a flute, your guitar should still be heard well, piano should be heard well, the drums should be heard well, the vocals should be heard well. Flute should also be heard well. If you bring in your flute and you notice that the piano is not heard with the right quality like how it was heard earlier, then that means the flute is actually creating some kind of clash issue. So be careful when you choose an instrument. So this is what I usually do. Whenever I add an instrument on top of a layered instrument, what I do is sometimes I mute the instrument that I now added. I listen to the song. I'll try to focus on individual elements. And then once again, I unmute that. Now I just focus on whether I can still hear every other element clearly, and if I can also hear the flute well. I'll just look for the clarity of that flute. If I add flute and I notice that something else goes wrong, something doesn't sound right, Why does it feel like the quality has now become more muffled or more muddy? Then that just means that I have some tonal issue with that flute that I added, or it's clashing with something else, and I probably need to change the octave of the flute, or change the VST, or change the tone, anything. But that's the main problem that you need to look into. Make sure you don't add instruments or you keep layering so much to a point where everything sounds muddy and everything sounds like it's clashing. Now let's come to the last and the most important point. But before we get into that, if you've not subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to subscribe, because there are a lot of important tutorials that I keep putting out every single week, and that will eventually benefit the way you make songs, the way you mix and master. So don't forget to subscribe and like. Now coming to the last point, and that is your song actually doesn't depend on the number of instruments. Now, all this time, if you've seen, like, I was doing all these different instruments, I never said the greater the number of instruments, the better the quality. I never said that. I just meant that you need to fill the frequency spectrum. You can even do it with one instrument. Always remember that a lot of instruments doesn't mean to say that you have a better quality. You can even make great music with just two instruments or one instrument, okay? And I'll tell you how to achieve it. All the other rules still apply, mind you. So let's say I don't want any of these instruments that I just drew. Now let's say I just want vocals and guitar. That's it. I don't want anything else. And remember, we're talking about a studio recording. We're not talking about live performance. So in studio recording, you can layer it, right? Let's say vocals is gonna kind of occupy the mid frequency area or a high mid frequency area. So I'm gonna draw that over here. So let's put this as vocals. And I know for a fact that I'm gonna do some strummed elements on the guitar, which is probably again gonna come in this mid frequency area. Now, all the other rules are applying, which means I need to still fill the frequency, still make sure I have variations, and still make sure I don't clash anything. So how do I fill the frequency with just two elements? The simplest answer is layering. So I can play the guitar in different octaves, right? I can play different strings on the guitar, I can play different octaves, and that's going to change the pitch. So I can play the lowest E note, which can give me some bass. I can also come up an octave higher, which can give me some highs. I can also layer some harmonies with my vocals. So I can do some soprano harmonies, some alto harmonies, or I can do some ad-libs, which is probably going to come a little low. So the point in this is that you don't need 20 instruments to make a good song. It's totally up to you. You can use whatever instruments you want, how many ever instruments you want, but the rules are still applying. So whether you use 2 instruments or 20 instruments, you still need to make sure you layer them the right way. Even when I use 20 instruments, be it VST or be it live instruments, within the 20 also I still layer. Meaning if I have piano, it's not just one track. I have a piano, I have a pad that kind of layers underneath it to give it some kind of width, and I also have some synthesizers which gives that high end but a very thin sound that kind of moves the song forward. If I just have one piano track, it's maybe going to sound okay, but it still needs that power, and all these three together is going to give me that power. So that's how you need to layer it. Whether it's vocals or whatever, doesn't matter, but you need to layer instruments in a way where each layer adds something extra special on your song. If you add something and it has no effect on the song still sounds the same whether you add it or not. That just means that you don't need that track at all. It's probably clashing with something and you don't need it. You're just trying to make it fancy and you don't notice it clashing. So make sure that every single addition that you do to your song has meaning to it, has value to it. And when you add it, it's sounding a little better than how it was earlier. That's how you need to focus on, and that's how you know that your song is going to sound good. So all these 4 points that I'm talking to you about are very important, but they again become meaningless when you don't have a killer melody. So yes, you need a nice melody. Maybe yes, you need a very nice lyric too if you're making songs with lyrics. But just a killer melody and just good lyrics may not give you the best song. You have to incorporate all these technical concepts that I told you, because these are important while you mix and master as well. And when you have an empty song, it's hard for a mixing engineer to give that quality sometimes, right? So in your arrangement stage itself, when you play a song and you feel like, wow, it sounds fantastic, that means you're on the right track. No matter what, after mixing and mastering, your song is gonna sound great only. But in the arrangement stage itself, you feel like it's lacking some quality. Maybe I can fix it in the mixing mastering. Don't have that topic. Don't have that idea in your mind at all. It's not gonna sound great. You're just gonna keep fixing something that happened. That's a problem. So make sure that in your arrangement stage, you follow all these 4 steps that I talked about, and I can guarantee you that your song is going to come out good. Your quality is going to come out good actually. So if you found all these useful, and if you have any more tips that you want to add, don't forget to put them in the comments, and we'll all grow as a community. Thank you so much for watching. Keep making music, and I'll see you guys in another video.